Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's presentation from L-3 Aviation Products on ADSB technology and more specifically on L-3's revolutionary Lynx ADSB multi-link surveillance system. And we're also going to focus today on ATAS traffic and the future of ADSB. My name is Jeff Simon. I'm president of SocialFlight. For those of you joining us for the first time, I'd like to welcome you to the SocialFlight community. SocialFlight's a free web and mobile app dedicated to supporting general aviation. We do that by gathering tens of thousands of general aviation events and destinations. We make them available to you on SocialFlight.com on your phone or tablet by mapping them in the SocialFlight app. From fly-ins to pancake breakfasts, air shows, FA seminars, $100 hamburger destinations, everything's in SocialFlight, and our mission is to bring the aviation community together and give pilots like yourselves more reasons to get out there and fly. With over 50,000 pilots already using SocialFlight to plan their next adventure, we hope you'll leave here and check it out for yourselves. Now, in addition to events that you can attend in person, we also have online events, which is why we're all here today. Before we get started, here's a few tips. A recording of today's presentation will be available on SocialFlight.com, generally within a few hours, but certainly by tomorrow, and we'll send you a link by email after the presentation. Feel free to post questions during the presentation. There is a chat section, and there is also a section of Q&A that you can use. And we'll try to address those at the end. We'll go through and make sure that we handle as many of those as possibly can. One more item regarding audio. It is possible to use your PC to get the audio, but I'd also recommend using the dial-in if you're having any issues with that. Under audio options, you can drop down and select which audio you would like to use. We're fortunate to have a very special presenter tonight. Mark Lindsley has been flying for over 30 years, having first soloed in a J3 Cup. His flight instructors along the way included his grandmother, his grandfather, and his dad. So I'm guessing he had to pay a little more than the rest of us to get his wings, but probably in different ways. Mark's an ATP, a CFI, and a designated pilot examiner, and he's also the proud owner of a 1955 Cessna 170 and a 46 Taylorcraft, so certainly one of us in the masses of general aviation. So with that, I will hand it over to Mark. Welcome.
Thanks, Jeff, and you're exactly right. I had to pay in more ways than one when you fly with your relatives, but I really appreciate the introduction. And I can't say enough to thank you guys at SocialFlight for providing a platform like this for the pilot community. And I don't know about all the listeners out there, if you haven't registered for this, it is well worth your time to get the app or get online and register, because I just started using it last year, and there's really nothing else out there doing this or providing a platform for the pilot community. And we can go to the next slide there, Jeff. Jeff's right. I am a pilot, and that's what I am first and foremost, and I work for L-3 Avionics Systems, which is a division of L-3 Aviation Products. Now, one of the things, if you look at that first photo there, we have a fleet of general aviation aircraft. That's one of our Baron, our Beechcraft Baron BE-58, and they're all well-equipped airplanes. That other photo there is just to show you I've you know, also owned that 155 Cessna 170 with my father, and he was, you know, integral in teaching me to fly. So I get a chance to fly a lot of different equipment, from old 1946 Taylorcrafts through the Baron, which is well-equipped for L3's purposes. So one of the things we want to look at is, you look at that Baron there, we've got weather radar, ADSB weather. We've got Stormscope. We've got ADSB in weather. The airplane's well equipped, and over the last couple of years we've had a great opportunity to actually compare each weather product and see what we're getting and see what it looks like, and actually use our Lynx systems to actually decipher what the best source of weather is for different avenues. So let's move to the next slide. One of the questions I get a lot of the times, especially at trade shows, is who is Lynx? And they think maybe this is a new company on the market. Lynx is just a product line that L3 is producing, and L3 has been around for quite some time. You can see kind of our company history there as we've been bought through the years, starting off as Learjet and ending up as BF Goodrich and L3 Aviation Products. We've been building safety sensors and standby gyros for over 50 years and supporting most of that product line to this day. Two of the most common products that we're known for are our Stormscope and Skywatch products, which have been placed on a lot of general aviation airplanes. Our main focus, though, is safety sensors and systems. And so this product line where ADSB was right up our wheelhouse when it came to designing a safety device. And that's who L-3 is. We're not a pop-up company just for ADSB. We've been around for a while building aviation electronics. So let's move on and talk about the ADSB system out there. What is ADSB? Now we see a lot of these slides. I'm going to touch on some of these just quickly so we can build a base knowledge of what we're dealing with. The United States is the only country that has built a dual band system. What I mean by dual band is we're using two different frequencies, 1090 megahertz and 978 megahertz. All the other countries out there, and there's a lot of mandates going on right now, Australia, Europe, Canada will have one coming, they're built around the 1090 megahertz frequency. So we're the ones who build a dual band. And think of this kind of like FM and AM radio stations. They're two total different frequencies, and they need two total different systems to work. Now one of the things to remember is if you're going to operate an airplane above 18,000 feet, you have to have a 1090 megahertz device. If you're going to operate an airplane below that, my 1955-170 will hardly climb to above 10,000 feet. You have the choice. You can have a 1090 or a 978 frequency. So let's move on to the next slide, and we'll keep describing the system. So what is ADSB out? Well, in the past, we had Mode C. Everyone's familiar with Mode C transponders. And there's two things that a Mode C transponder would let you know. It'd give you a squawk code and an altitude once it was interrogated. Now we've got this package of information. If you look down that list there, ADSB is sending out GPS altitude, barometric altitude, velocity, the length and width of the aircraft, transponder codes, tail numbers. It tells whether the airplane is going to have ADSB in capabilities. It also gives the rate of turn, which we're going to talk about in the future, and even more information. And it's sending it out in 1 second increments over and over again, packages of information. Now you think, why in the world are they going to want things like the length and width of the airplane? Well, you think about this. This really is a modern, advanced way to monitor and control traffic on the ground in controlled environments. And one of the things it will allow is they'll even be able to have fuel trucks or snow plows with ADSB transponders on them, so they'll know exactly where these vehicles are on the taxi environment. You could have two opposing air transport aircraft coming on opposing taxiways, and the air traffic controller, the guy on the ground control computer back in some dark cave, can instantly know that those two airplanes have wingspans that would not allow them to cross paths. And so it would give just the controllers more information. You could have taxiway and runways with weight limits, and controllers would be able to know they can't even send that airplane down that taxiway or runway. It really will be the next generation of air traffic control, and it will increase safety. We think about runway incursions and the big push that's been in the PTS standards over the last 10 years with runways incursions. And now you're going to be able to know when an airplane's holding short, when he's not holding short, because they'll be able to track them very accurately with WAAS GPS on the ground. So let's move on. The next part we're going to talk about is ADSB in. What is ADSB in? This is what everyone wants. It's going to boil down to both traffic and weather. Now the traffic can be received on either frequency, either the 1090 megahertz or the 978, and they can also use the ADSR. And I'm going to try to explain this the best I can because this gets really confusing when we talk about all these different options out here. Picture this. You got a Cessna 150 out at a remote airstrip in Idaho, and he's shooting landings there in a left-hand traffic pattern, and he's met the mandate with his 978 or UAT solution, and he's got in and out. So he has an ADSB in and out through a 978. As he turns downwind, we got a citation on a long final. Now he, since he flies above 18,000 feet, has a 1090 solution. Now here's what's going on. We're talking AM/FM radios. They can't talk to each other, right? That 1090 aircraft will not see the 978 aircraft because he can't pick up that frequency. They both have ADS-B in, and they both have met the mandate. So let's take the same scenario and let's move these guys over near St. Louis. Now they're near St. Louis. Same scenario, the Cessna 150 turns downwind, citation's on a long final, and now all of a sudden they both are seeing these targets pop up on their traffic displays because now we're getting ADSR. And what's going on is that Cessna 150 is sending out its package of information that's being picked up by a ground station. The ground station is then translating that data and resending it to the citation in the format he can receive, which is 1090. And the same thing is happening with the citation. He's also receiving, sending his information in 1090. It's being translated and sent back to the 150 in 978. And it's all done through a ground network of antennas across the whole country operating to this day. So that's the traffic system right now. You can receive traffic via 1090 or 978 or through a ground station, which would be ADSR. So a single band solution is not a complete solution. And a single band would be as if you just had a 1090 or you just had a 978 UAT solution. Let's move on to the weather. FISB is received only through the 978 frequency. I know this gets complicated, but stick with me now. Above 18,000 we had to have 1090. Below 18,000 we had the option of using the 978 frequency, and we're the only country in the world doing it. So with that 978 frequency, the government was able to send up through the ground stations a lot of other information like NEXRAD, like METARs, TFRs, AirMets, SIGMETs, all kinds of information that would be beneficial to the pilot to make decisions in flight. And there's more coming. The FAA is going to continue to add that information in the future here. So the last thing I want to take a note on here is it's free of charge. And this is the incentive that we've all been given to upgrade our aircraft with ADS-B. All this information is coming free of charge once you upgrade your aircraft with the proper 978 receiving equipment. Now, I know there's a lot of guys out there who use XM equipment, and we use XM equipment in our fleet as well. And you know, that can get expensive. You're looking at about $69 a month, about $800 a year in savings from obtaining UAT weather services rather than the XM satellite base. So I'll just touch base here real quick, Jeff, on the differences that I see in the two systems. Right off the bat, XM is coming from a satellite system, so you get it when you're on the ground. Where ADS-B is coming from a ground network, which requires line of sight reception, so you will not always receive that when you're on the ground at an airport. Sometimes you've got to get up to traffic pattern altitude or even higher in some remote areas to be able to receive that weather from ADS-B. The other thing that XM does provide that ADS-B does not right now is lightning data. And a lot of people feel, and I've seen it myself, is better demarcation of thunderstorms and rain cells within the XM weather environment than in ADS-B. And the last thing I've noticed that the XM provides that ADS-B does not is it shows freezing precipitation rather than just precipitation on the weather radar depiction. Now, with that being said, I'll just give my personal opinion. If I were paying the bills of a flight department, I'd probably cancel my XM subscription because I feel like what it does is good enough. On the ground, I got 4G on my iPad and my phone. I pick up weather all the time. In the air, I know what's coming. So I'll give you guys a heads up right now. This ADS-B-in, this is our first generation of ADS-B-in information. It gets better and better. What's coming down the pipe, we're going to have lightning over the last 5 minutes. So you're going to get lightning strikes in the previous 5 minutes. You're going to be able to get turbulence here in the future. You're going to be able to get icing levels and icing precipitation from 3,000 feet right up to the flight levels. You'll have cloud tops information provided. And they're also going to add AWAS stations and update them on a 1-minute basis. So you're going to start getting those remote airports with just AWAS reporting the weather at their airport on a 1-minute basis. And this is all coming down the pipe according to the FAA in the next few years, which to me, I look at that and I think this is going to only get better as far as ADSB in information. So last thing to remember, you can only get the FISB information if you have a 978N receiver. Okay, let's move to the next slide.
Mark, let's pause for just 1 second. We have a few people that are having some audio challenges, so I'm going to put a quick slide up there just to make sure everybody can see where they select their audio options on the screen. Just give a second for everyone to take a look at that, and hopefully that'll help the few folks that are having a couple of audio issues before we continue.
No problem.
And that is it. Okay, let's move on.
Okay, when do I need to complete my ADSB? You know, I get to go to a lot of events, trade shows, Oshkosh, Sun and Fun, a lot of shows where I get to talk to a lot of end users. And the common message I hear is 2020 is a long ways away, Mark. And you know, sometimes we think it sounds like a long ways away, but we just put this date up here. It's really only 35 months away because the mandate starts December 31st, 2019 will be the last day we can operate in these airspace without ADSB. I also hear, Mark, prices are going to go down. And I think we're going to get new products and new features in the future. Well, one of the things to think about is prices, that's going to be a difficult thing to justify going down. And one of the reasons is because there's less and less availability to get this equipment installed. And product features, I mean, one of the advantages of the L3 products is it's software driven. So every time a new feature comes out, we add it. Even our legacy customers get it. I can say, though, that the lowest cost installations will occur earlier on. And as we get closer to the mandate, it'll become more expensive. One of the advantages I get when I get to fly around to a lot of avionics shops, I get to talk to these guys about the TAS mandates. They're still talking about the TAS mandates that came through and RVSM. And some of us in the general aviation, we don't really think about those mandates. We didn't even know about them. Some of us didn't even know what TAS was. But what it was a terrain awareness and warning system mandate for turbine engine aircraft over 9 seats. That's all it applied to. That's a limited number of airplanes that we have out there when you think of the whole country. And yet the backlog at the avionics shops and the backlog at the manufacturers for producing equipment for them was enormous. They still talk about it today, all the money they made during the TAS mandate. And this is going to be different. It's going to be bigger. Same thing with RVSM in 2005. That was the mandate for aircraft flying between flight levels 290 up to 410. Same thing. Those were just jet aircraft, and the backlog and the waiting lines were long. And I'm afraid this ADSB is going to get worse. I even had a friend here after the last webinar we did. He called in. He said, you know what, I decided to put a Lynx unit in my J5 Cub. It's what I want to do. And you know, he started that process. I think we did that one in November, and he was not able to get scheduled till April to get that installation done because of the backlog of aircraft. So that's something to start thinking about right now. The backlog will going to be a big cost inhibitor when it comes to doing your installation. Okay, let's move along. So when it comes to ADSB solutions for L3, I want to talk about two different solution lines. We have a whole line of products we created for the ADSB, and we think they would line up with just about everyone's needs, desires, and type of airplanes. We have UAT solutions, and then we have dual band solutions, which would be 1090 and 978 in type of box. Let's talk about the UAT to begin with. If you see those on the left-hand side, there's a couple questions when you get tactical you need to ask yourself when it comes to installing a UAT box. The first one is your transponder. What transponder do you have in your airplane? One of the things you need to think about, I run into a lot of customers with legacy Cessnas. They're like, you know what, I just want a low-cost solution. I'm going to keep my transponder in the airplane, which is required when you have a UAT device. You're not replacing the transponder. And then I'm going to go with a UAT solution. Well, the transponder, if you think about it, is going to be the weakest link. in your ADS-B solution. I told you a little bit about my 1955 Cessna 170. I had an AT narco transponder. I mean, that's like 40-year-old technology. The last biannual check I had to send that in for, it cost me $600 just to get it fixed. And then I was just told recently there's no one fixing it anymore. So it wouldn't be a good solution to say, hey, I'm going to spend all this money to get an ADS-B equipment in my airplane and then have a legacy transponder in it. So if you did happen to, let's say you just spent good money on a GTX 327 or a 330, that transponder is a good transponder, it's a reliable transponder, has a lot of life left in it. That can drive a remote box perfectly because it's a digital transponder. So that would work well. The other thing to think about is WAAS source. Sometimes you don't have a WAAS source in your airplane. A lot of airplanes didn't upgrade to WAAS navigators. One of the good things about all of our products is every one of these products that you're going to see today all have an integrated WAAS GPS inside the box. And lastly, that I want to talk about, well, actually a couple more points when you're looking at these UATs, was the avionics bay. A lot of people think, hey, I want to go with this lower cost UAT solution, and you're flying, well, let's say my airplane for instance, a 1955 170 has no avionics bay. So you're going to have to put this box, the only place to put that remote mounted box is behind the baggage compartment. So then you have an avionics shop, maybe bending a rack on a brake to actually mount the box, running the wire and cabling through the belly of the airplane back up to where your transponder is. It can be a lot of labor for the installation. So that's another item to think about. And lastly, remember the UAT solution is for the United States only. If you plan on selling your airplane to Canada or taking trips to Mexico in the future, the UAT solution will not meet their mandates. We're the only one using this UAT solution. Those are some big questions you need to ask yourself when you're looking at a UAT solution. Now let's talk over here quickly about the dual band solutions. Then I'll go through each product slowly. But the dual band solutions, what's nice about those is they're Mode S extended squitter transponders. So you can install them in any aircraft. And literally right now you can see them going in Falcons and Citations right on down to Cessna 152s. And they are a Mode S transponder, which is 1090, so it could go into Canada, it could fly into Mexico. It will meet the mandate worldwide in any country right now. And it also has all the benefits of being able to receive the 978 free weather and traffic information. Those are some of the advantages of having an NGT-9000 or a dual band model. So let's look at the product line. We're going to go right through left to right. The first product right there is the NGT-1000. A lot of friends and some customers, and we have people at shows come up to us and they say, hey, I just want the lowest cost solution. That's the lowest cost solution right there, NGT-1000. And I can honestly say I've never recommended anyone to buy it. And here's the reason why. Because it's just paying the tax. Nobody likes a mandate. The FAA came down and gave us a mandate, says we all have to do this ADS-B, and we grumble about it. We're Americans. We don't want to be forced into mandates. But when you buy an NGT-1000, that's all you did, is you just paid the tax. Because all that's going to do is send out that package of information from your transponder out, all of those list of things that I told you about every 1 second. And the FAA gets to take advantage of it, and every other airplane has ADS-B and gets to take advantage of it. You don't receive a lot of benefit from it. However, if people want to sell them or want to buy them, we will sell you the NGT-1000. But I really encourage people to at least take the step up to the NGT-2000. So you see the next product to the right is the NGT-2000. This does the same thing. You got a GTX 327, you put in your code. It sends that signal back to that remote box. It packages it with that package of information that the FAA wants, for ADS-B, and it sends it out. But it's also receiving ADS-B in. And so you're getting that free weather and traffic and METARs and TAFs and NOTAMs and all that package of information, and you're getting it received in through the system. And it Wi-Fi's it up to your iPad or your mobile device. So you could be looking on ForeFlight and seeing that weather and traffic displayed on ForeFlight. So you're getting some real benefit free of charge, no monthly subscription when you go to an NGT-2000. Now, just on a side note, that 2000 is currently under a promotion through June through L3 right now that says we will match any of our competitors' ADSB out price. So if there's somebody out there that says, hey, we'll sell you ADSB out for X amount of dollars, we'll give you ADSB in and out for the same price. Something to keep in mind when you go talk to your avionics shop. Okay, the next product line up, the NGT-2500. We're still in the UAT group. You still got to have a good transponder to operate it. But this device is going to get weather and traffic in, just like the 2000, but it has the capability of hardwiring that information to a multifunction display. So if you have a Avidyne 440, 540 with a 10.2 which is coming out, it'll display the weather and traffic on there. If you have a GMX 200, you will have a weather and traffic will be able to display it on there. The Aspen will be able to display the weather and traffic. All of your legacy Garmin 430s, 530s, the 650s, 750s, even G1000s can display the traffic from these devices because we mimicked the traffic protocol from the past, but that's another longer story. But most of these displays out there will display the traffic from any one of our product lines. So those are our UAT solutions. Now we're going to move to the right to the NGT-9000. I'll tell you right off the bat, this has been the best-selling product in L3's history as far as quantity over a short period of time. It's been a great product. The NGT-9000 has the benefits of all that ADSB in through the UAT receiver. It also has a WAAS GPS in the box. It's a Mode S extended squitter transponder. And it also has a multifunction display to actually show the weather and traffic on the display. So it's much more than a transponder. It's become a multifunction display with a lot of safety sensor technology included. And then lastly, we have multiple options to upgrade that NGT-9000 and add active traffic, ATAS, and TAS, which we're going to talk about in the upcoming slides as well. So let's move on to the next slide. I wanted to touch base on the interconnectivity. One of the things that's very important to us is we wanted to be able to work with everyone. So we've made this information that's all open protocol. We've looked to work with all the major app builders out there and multifunction display manufacturers as well. If you look right there, we're using typical certified buses, ARINC 429, RS-232, RS-422 protocol. We have our own internal WAAS GPS in each box. We have, and that's the one that's certified for the mandate. Multifunction and PFD interfaces. We can show weather and traffic on your Aspen. We can show weather and traffic on those MX-20 iLynx and GMX 200s. We can show traffic on all the GTN and GNS series. And we will be able to show weather and traffic on the Avidyne multifunction display, the 540 and 440 here in the future as well when the 10.2 software becomes available. Another thing we looked at is we have some airplanes who don't want to add more antennas on there. We have a GPS splitter and coupler available. This will allow people to install two NGT-9000s in the same airplane, which we've seen multiple times, especially in airplanes that typically have two transponders. We also have airplanes who already have a WAAS GPS antenna on board the airplane for a navigator, and we can split off that and use our device without having to add another antenna. This becomes really important for a lot of Cirrus aircraft with composite structures. It becomes difficult to place antennas, or pressurized airplanes where there's more expense involved when you're actually adding an antenna to a pressurized airplane. And lastly, if you look down at the bottom of the slide there, we have a long list of applications that we're working with right now. These seem to be the most popular here. We've got EFB, AvPlan, Flight Plan Go, FlyQ, ForFlight, which is very popular, the Navigator, and the SkyRadar and WingX Pro. We'd like to work with any other apps out there. If we've got an app manufacturer out there right now that says, hey, I'd like to work with you guys, call us up. We'll give you information free of charge, and we'll work with that interface as well. So we'll really look to be as interconnective as possible with the NGT line. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Here's where we are going to look at our simulator. Now, you guys will all have access to this simulator at home. Once you're done with this webinar, you can log on to our website at L3Lynx.com, or you can also go to the App Store and or your typical Android application store, and you can download the Lynx app for your Android or Apple device, and do this on your iPad as well. So one of the things I want to talk about when you're looking at this display is its resistive touchscreen. So on the real display, one of the things, it's not like your Apple phone or your Android device. It takes a little bit of pressure to put it. Our human factors guy says this allows us to not have a lot of false touches. That way when you're touching something, that's what you mean to touch, and you actually implemented the key you wanted to. There's no hard keys on this device as well. You know, one of the first things people say is, well, how could you have a multifunction display on the face of a transponder? You can. There's actually more square inches than your typical Garmin 430 of multifunction display. And display technology changes. I mean, my kids are watching movies on my iPhone now because display technology just improves on a daily basis. So if you see this unit live, you get an impression of how valuable it is. The other thing I want you to take a look at is on the bottom of both screens, there's some dots. The dots tell you what page you're on and how many pages are available. So with that being said, let's launch the simulator, Jeff, and we'll walk through some of the functionality. Now Jeff is going to use his mouse as a finger, and when you use it on your PC, you'll do the same thing. You click and drag like you're dragging your finger. So Jeff, let's go to the left screen and drag it to the transponder page. Okay. So this is how you would normally get in the airplane, and some people, they like to fly just looking at those numbers. But one of the things I tell people is you enter your number just by touching your finger right to the display. Go ahead and click right on 1200, Jeff. And up will come a keypad, and you can enter your 4-digit code. Once that code's entered, though, don't stare at 4 numbers for the whole flight. This box has become much more than that. Go ahead and then swipe that page away so you're on your traffic page. Now you have a traffic page and a weather page. Now when the first unit came out that we were flying, it was just like this. I would always turn this to the traffic page, and the right page I'd have on a weather page before taking off. So go ahead and click on that target, just like you did there, Jeff. Oh, he escaped us. Let's go out a range. And we'll wait for another target to come through, and we'll click on them. One of the advantages, there's one. One of the advantages of ADSB, when he touches that target, hits the information button, just like that, up comes this packet of information that tells us the actual IN number of the airplane, what type of aircraft it is, and the ground speed. And this is, just an advantage of having a traffic system built around that package of information that's being transmitted through ADSB. And one of the nice things about it, go ahead and click Done. If you're in a busy airport environment, you can continue to track that airplane. The air traffic controller could have said, hey, you see that Cessna 182, if you're, I want you to avoid that 182. You could find him visually, click on him on your screen, see his IN number to confirm him, and continue to track him throughout the entire approach to the airport. It's a nice, I thought of it as a gee whiz feature when I first playing with it, but it's become very useful in busy airport environments. Okay, let's go over to the right screen and talk about some of our other FISB pages. The right screen we're looking at right there, if you look on the bottom, it's got 3 weather pages left to the right where we're going to be looking at. And we're looking at a map with weather radar depicted on there. So you have weather radar picture. You also see some red circles on the map. Those are going to be TFRs. If you had a TFR in your area, you could just reach up and click that TFR on this graphical weather page. When you touch on that TFR, up comes the information button. And you click on the information button, and there it is. There's a sporting event going up there. It looks like Central Michigan. Must be the CMU is playing a football game or something. So when that comes up, you got the immediate information in your area about the TFR that you should be avoiding, whether it be presidential or anything else. And the same thing works. Go ahead and push Done there. with airports. The airport environments will be color-coded, whether they're VFR or IFR or marginal. If you touched on an airport like that, and up would come Lansing Airport and the current METAR, visibility, and weather available at that airport. That's all available through the graphical weather page. Go ahead, Jeff. Let's scroll. Let's go done with that, and let's scroll to the next page to the right. Now we're on the aloft page. Now in the aloft page, you have both temperatures aloft, where we're at here. You can change the altitude up or down and get the temperatures aloft. You can also switch the page to winds aloft. I really like this page. I use it quite a bit to be able to see the forecasted winds aloft at my altitude or above me, just to see what the best avenue for cruising flight would be en route in my destinations. And I like it because I have a designated page for it. It's not buried in a deep system or difficult to interpret, overlaid over multiple other mapping images. Let's scroll to the last page to the right, where we have our textual information. I like the textual information page. What happens is if you actually click on the right-hand side like Jeff did there, you have the option of looking at METARs, TAFs, or NOTAMs. You can load airports in the box right there. And the way you would load it, you just type in the letter of the airport. If we did GRR, and then you would push done. You could add them as a favorite by clicking the star, and then they would stay in there as a favorite, and you would no longer have to enter them. So if you had favorite airports and you're flying constantly between Grand Rapids and Indianapolis, you could have those programmed into your device and load them at any time. Now this is the simulator. Now one of the things I did not tell you about when we were talking about the NGT-9000 is it also has the Wi-Fi capabilities. So not only does the NGT-2000 and 2500 have Wi-Fi capabilities, all of our 9000 lines will Wi-Fi the information to your iPad or Android device. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. One of the great things about having a device with no hard keys that is software driven, that's all touch screen, is we've provisioned for memory to continually add features and benefits. This has been one of the most exciting benefits we've added, and I get this question a lot. What is ATAS? We've added ATAS to it. The reason nobody knows what ATAS is we're the only ADSB manufacturer right now currently certified to ATAS standards. So what ATAS is, everybody knows what TCAS is, right? ATAS is just another TSO for ADSB version of traffic alerting systems. So you have an ADSB traffic alerting system, and it's based off the ADSB package of information that is sent. No other ADSB manufacturer is doing it currently, and we'll talk a little bit about how that works and why it's so important. Number one, it provides traffic alerting at all altitudes. What's going on right now is most of your TAS manufacturers or ADSB manufacturers right now, since they don't meet the TSO, will turn off that alerting once you get low to the ground, which is to me is one of the keyest places you're going to need it because you're in the traffic pattern. The other thing that ADSB Alerts does is, remember I told you earlier about that packet of information that it's sending? It's got your turn rate, your ground speed, your direction of aircraft flight. You don't just get within range of another airplane and have an alert, so you won't have as many false alerts. Now I've flown with a lot of traffic systems, both ours and our competitors, and one of the problems with the previous way of alerting to traffic was we just had a system that interrogated Mode C targets, and when it found that target, it just got a range and a bearing and it displayed them, and when it thought that target might be in a collision area, it would just alert you. The problem with that is you'd get a lot of nuisance alerting. You get down to Florida, you get in some busy aircraft environments, and you would just get a lot of traffic call-outs that weren't real. And what happens then is you begin to not take heed when you hear them. The good thing about ADSB is there is no nuisance alerting. So when you hear an alert, you better look up and pay attention. I've been flying this for a year now. I've had several ATAS alerts. It has been one of those items where I look up, found the target immediately, and it was a quick reaction because I don't get nuisance alerting, so I am ready to find an airplane and see and avoid it. One of the great things about today is everyone listening to this webinar right now is going to get free of charge ATAS alerting with their NGT-9000 when they purchase it. One of the ways you do it, Jeff Simon is going to send us over a list of all your emails addressed, and we will then send out a ADSB ATAS certificate. And that certificate you'll fill out and bring to your avionics shop. When you purchase your NGT-9000 or in your current NGT-9000, they will load the software necessary to turn on the ATAS alerting system in your device. So that'd be the process for doing it. Okay, so one of the things we're going to do today is we are going to actually look at a video of a chilling real-life scenario. So let's go to the video, Jeff. So while I'm going to just brief us a little bit on this video, this is a real-life scenario. It's derived from FAA data. One of the items when you think about it, there was a new controller in training, and he was being trained by another controller, and he had made some mistakes in communication, and he communicated incorrect information to a wrong aircraft. We're only showing 2 airplanes in the pattern right here, but there really is 9 total aircraft in the pattern, and we've just narrowed it down to 2. The green aircraft is a business jet low wing, and the orange aircraft is a Cessna 172 high wing. The Lynx display inset on the bottom right-hand side would be from the perspective of the Cessna 172, but in reality he had no traffic avoidance system. So if you notice, the Lynx display in this reenactment shows no alerts because of the ATAS algorithms that were applied to this scenario. As these airplanes are traveling on downwind, the business jet obviously 1,500 feet traffic pattern right downwind. The Cessna 172 at about 1,000 foot right downwind. There's no collision course because they're traveling in parallel headings. Now as they come up here, the ATAS is going to continually, every 1 second, receive information as the heading changes, as the speed changes of both aircraft as they come around the corner here. This is a busy airport, typical control field scenario.
Traffic, 10 o'clock, high, less than 1 mile, descending.
Now go ahead, Jeff, and pause the video right there. Now you see, you're not going to just be getting traffic alerts down the entire downwind leg, or when you're turning crossing, because the airplane could tell you're going to actually be turning, or there wasn't a collision course set. But when you do get the traffic alert, it would have been time to immediately look up, find the aircraft, and see and avoid it in whatever way possible. This scenario was a perfect storm between the new controller, multiple airplanes in the traffic pattern, and the other low wing airplane coming from above with the high wing airplane below, both of them in each other's blind spots. This one had a tragic ending where multiple deaths because of the collision course. It's just one of those scenarios that we like to point out. The equipment in the airplane can really help you see and avoid other airplanes. When we have this available through the FAA mandate, I just encourage everybody to take advantage of it because it's life-saving information when you're able to get a traffic alert like that that's accurate, quick, and is not a nuisance alert that is not applied to you. Let's go ahead and move on to the next slide, Jeff. The next feature on the NGT-9000 I want to talk about is one of my favorite. It's the NGT-9000 Plus. And this is what people need to understand. All of those NGT-9000s have traffic available, ADSB traffic. However, the Plus brings it to a different level. We'll wait for the slide to load.
Are you not seeing the active traffic slide?
No, I'm sorry, Jeff. My screen is grayed out right now with just a black. Oh, here it comes up now. Excellent. So here's the NGT-9000 Plus slide. Now keep in mind, for years I sold Skywatch collision avoidance boxes for L-3. We sold these boxes from anywhere between $15,000 and $20,000 to a long line of airplanes from Cessna 172s right on up who wanted traffic in the cockpit. And it was a great seller. A few years later, Hav and I came out with a great competitive products. Garmin about 10 years later came out with a competitive product. They all did similar things. They interrogated Mode C and Mode S transponders. They found a range and a bearing, and then they displayed it on multiple displays. It was one of the greatest feature safety benefit products you could buy. I mean, you'd go out there and you'd see it. You wanted one in your airplane. Now here, if you look down in the bottom right-hand corner, both us, Hav and I, and Garmin, we all built about the same size box, about a 9-pound system. You had this 9-pound big box, had to go into the back of the airplane to be installed, and you needed an active traffic antenna to operate it, and obviously a display. Now here's the part that blows my mind. I don't know how our engineers did it, but they have taken all of that active traffic technology and they've placed it into the NGT-9000. So keep in mind, that NGT-9000 that we've been talking about, it's a Mode S transponder. It's a UAT receiver. It's got its own WAAS GPS in the box. It's Wi-Fi capable, and inside the box is an active traffic device, or TCAS-1, and it'll be certified TCAS-1 by the end of the first quarter. So, or I should say later this year. So we have a TCAS-1 type device inside this transponder. And you say, well, why would I need that? Well, keep in mind, there's going to be a lot of airplanes out there who do not do the ADS-B upgrade. There'll be some Cessna 150s out there who say, I'm just going to keep flying with my Mode A or Mode C transponder out here in Montana. I don't need to be part of this ADS-B system. You won't be able to see an aircraft out there that doesn't have ADS-B equipment on board. Also, if you go to Canada or Mexico, or you go outside the continental U.S. that doesn't have a dual band system like we have here, you'll be missing out on some of the airplanes. An active traffic system allows you to continue to interrogate all the targets around you, pick up Mode C targets, Mode S targets, ADS-B targets. The algorithms take all that information and then they present you with the best possible data on the display. So you get all possible traffics with an NGT-9000 Plus. And it's all in a very small box. Now here's the great part. When you buy an NGT-9000, that technology is in the box. So if later down the road you decide, I want to sell my Cherokee 6 to a Canadian customer, he can add the active traffic antenna and enable the active traffic capabilities in the box, and it becomes literally a TCAS-1 and ADS-B solution with a multifunction display. It is really one of the neatest applications we have within our NGT-9000 system, because there's really nobody else on the market putting that kind of technology into that small of a space at a price like that. It's one of the greatest features we have in here. Okay, let's move to the next slide. Terrain options. This is the cool part about having this touchscreen. Every few months we just release a new application to this device, and people get to purchase or obtain a new feature free of charge on their NGT-9000. One of the things we added was, you remember I talked about earlier, is the TAWS mandate that we had early in the 2000s that required all those 9-seat turbine aircraft to have terrain awareness and warning systems on board their airplane. Well, we had a WAAS GPS in our box. We had a color display. We had provision for memory to be able to load a worldwide database. We made our system into a certified Class B TAWS aircraft. So for those people who have to have certified Class B TAWS, it's a very quick software upgrade and enablement to add certified Class B TAWS to your NGT-9000. And there you have a TAWS display that will send you automatic alerts when you have a terrain situation coming up. We also then added, just in the last few months, a terrain vision. Now this is for the guy who doesn't necessarily need Class B TAWS but would like a terrain display. And so for a much more affordable price, $893 right now, you can actually give terrain advisories through this image on your display. You notice when you look at the bottom of the display, we just keep adding circles. That first box I started flying a couple years ago just had four little pages on the bottom there, and now I'm up to 6 pages with all of the features that we have in our Baron right now. But as you slide through there, terrain is one of the great ways to start off each flight. Before I pull on the runway, I turn my left display to traffic and see what's going on in the traffic environment. I turn my right display to the terrain, so I know exactly what I have to see and avoid on the terrain during the climb out. Those are the two things we don't want to run into. We don't want to run into other airplanes. We don't want to run into the ground. 2 new features that came out with the latest software upgrade that have been really good. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, the next thing is NGT-9000 with Stormscope. Okay, the Stormscope, like I said, this has been one of our most popular products that we sold. We sold almost 60,000 Stormscopes, and one of the most popular units within those Stormscopes was the WX500. The WX500 is a remote box that actually surveys real-time lightning data. We're talking the electromagnetic information that's coming from the clouds when you have a lightning strike. We added interface for the WX500 into the NGT-9000. Now we have a page dedicated to live lightning data. Now when you think about it, everyone says, well, I got weather information on my ADSB or XM or something. Live storm data is different. It's the only real-time weather you're going to see in the cockpit. Everything else has got a data link. And also, live storm data is giving you intra-cloud strikes, where ADSB and XM weather is just going to be able to give you cloud-to-ground strikes. The advantage of that, when you think about it, is cloud-to-ground strikes happen during the dissipating stage of a thunderstorm. That's when it's raining itself out. That's when it's not at its peak. But during the mature stages of a thunderstorm is where they're the most violent, and that's where you don't want to actually penetrate the thunderstorm. And when you see the live storm data on here and you have both the NEXRAD weather information available on the same display, it really gives you the true picture of how to avoid weather situations that could be catastrophic. So right now, this is free of charge. If you have a WX500, you can upgrade your NGT-9000 and add a Stormscope page to it and display WX500 information on your NGT-9000. Okay, let's move to the next slide. All right, we just want to summarize here real quick. The NGT-9000 really is the only single box solution. The reason I say that is we're the only box out there that's doing a Mode S transponder with a UAT receiver that has Wi-Fi capabilities and doesn't require another display. We do it all in one box. All of our boxes have their own internal WAAS GPS. All of our boxes with the NGT-9000 line have free FISB weather and TISB service. We've got multiple multifunction and PFD display options out there. Avidyne, Aspen, Garmin, the most popular ones we use. And it has a touchscreen display. The reason why this is so beneficial, I've said it over and over again, there's no hard keys on here. And just in the last year and a half, we've added multiple features: Stormscope, ATAS, Terrain Vision, ETAWS. All of these features keep coming down the pipe, and the FAA, who I told you about earlier, is going to be bringing out more products and services through ADSB, and you'll be able to add those when our software engineers load the next software load. You put it in your device, and now you've got capability to see lightning data from ADSB or cloud tops or icing levels, etc. So that's the Lynx unit, and I'm going to just hand this back to Jeff so we can take a few questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Mark. I mean, it's very, very interesting stuff. And I appreciate everyone posting the questions so that we can answer here. There's a couple places that you can post questions if you like. You can post them over in the chat section of the screen, and also there's a QA feature where you can post them in. And so we'll do our best to get through here, but obviously quite a few topics to cover. So let's start with how updates are done, Mark. We've got a lot of questions, and we'll cover a couple things here, which is both how they physically are accomplished, how that certificate actually gets to your shop to be done, and then also how do people stay up to date with the latest software?
Okay, that's a great question. One of the things is we want you to register your device with a warranty registration card internally. You can do that through your shop. Whoever installed it, or when they do install it, make sure they register the warranty with us so we can keep you up to speed on any changes or any software changes that are coming down in the future. Secondly, this certificate, you're just going to take this certificate, the hard certificate, into your avionics shop with you when you say, hey, I'd like to do the ATAS upgrade, or I want to purchase a 9000 and add ATAS to it. He will then fill out the certificate and literally send in the copy to us internally, and we will issue the code that will be programmed into your device when he loads it. So it does have to be programmed by one of our L3 certified dealers in order to enable some of these applications.
Okay, and just to be clear, we've got quite a few people, which is good news, that have already installed an NGT-9000 and have questions about how does this apply to them and what do they need to do.
They would need to take that certificate and their airplane back to the shop that installed it for them, and then the shop would then issue us a purchase order free of charge for the enablement code, and then we would provide the enablement code for him, and he would use his computer software tools that are used in the installation product to load your device with the newest software. Excellent.
Now, just to be clear, since we talked about active traffic during the presentation, but of course we also talked about ADSB only based traffic, there's some questions about when we went through the video whether that scenario that you have in the video there requires active traffic or not.
It does not. That scenario would have worked if those aircraft would have been ADSB equipped. There's multiple ways it could have worked. If both airplanes had 1090 devices, then the 1090 devices could have communicated to each other. So if both of those airplanes had Lynx NGT-9000, they would have been sending information back and forth to each other. The other thing would be that probably within a ground station reception area, a ground station would have also been sending information up there. The radar from the control tower would have picked up the target and rebroadcasted it through the ground station. So the NGT-9000 has multiple avenues of obtaining traffic information without adding an active traffic system.
Great. Now another area, kind of category of questions that we get certainly has to do with interconnections with other existing avionics. And I think that hopefully you can clear up some confusion that exists about the difference between using a splitter to be able to share an existing GPS antenna and not have to have your shop go and cut another hole in your plane and take the time of putting another GPS antenna on there, versus what really happens in terms of integrating the 9000 or 2500 systems with existing displays that you already have in the aircraft.
Okay, yeah, those are two different items there. So let's talk about the splitter first of all. We have certified and added to our installation manual a GPS splitter. Now this GPS splitter allows us, let's say you had a Garmin 430W, but you didn't like the display quality on it, and you wanted to add an NGT-9000 for your ADSB solution, but you didn't want to add another antenna. We could actually take an antenna splitter from your Garmin 430 antenna cable and take that signal and send it to the NGT-9000 so you wouldn't have to add another WAAS GPS antenna to the airframe. So that's dealing with the splitter. Now as far as interfacing to the displays, like earlier I talked about how we have ARINC 429, RS-232, and 422. Those are basically certified protocol for multiple displays out there. So we can show traffic on Honeywell displays, ProLine 21, all of the Garmin legacy displays, until we get to the 150 range. We can show traffic on just about every modern display out there. The weather we can also send from our device, hardwired, to the GMX200, the MX20, the iLink displays, Aspen displays we can send the weather to. And according to our testing group, the Avidine 10.2 software for the new 540, 440 devices will also be able to display the weather when the software is released as well. Did that answer the question about interface?
I think so. I think one area, though, that's probably that could use a little bit more attention is when you do talk about the traffic display to just about any device out there. I think we're really talking about the kind of pre-existing TISB kind of diamond display of what's out there. And if you could talk a little bit about the difference between that versus when you're highly integrated with something like the work you're doing with Aspen, you're doing with Avidine, that allows you to actually get ADSB depiction of traffic with all the benefits of that using the chevrons and the vector lines, etc.
Definitely. So when you think about it, typical TCAS symbology was just a diamond. That's all we knew. We talked about how we would interrogate a transponder, we find it out there, we get a range and bearing on it, and we put it on the display. We didn't have a lot of extra information to show you, just altitude and range and bearing. So when we got ADSB, we were able to add all this other information. If we remember that display we did during that video, we had these very indicative trend vectoring lines that actually showed both those airplanes crossing before they became a collision. It gives you an idea of the speed, the velocity of the aircraft, and the direction of where it's going to be. So those legacy displays, and it's difficult on a webinar like this to go through every display one by one, but we'll just take a 430 for example. The 430 is going to show your traffic targets from an NGT-9000 in a typical diamond display. The same thing with like an MX20 or so on, where if you had a 540, 440, they would show an actual ADSB target with the trend vectoring, which is advantageous when you're in an environment to be able to see quickly which direction is that aircraft pointing. The Lynx display obviously shows the direction and trend and vectoring of each aircraft in your target display.
Excellent. Now, another topic that's come up, which is I think kind of a universal challenge in some areas of ADSB that the FAA is also trying to track down, has to do with, can you explain shadowing and how that happens with people seeing their own aircraft occasionally?
Well, there was some hardware problems with the network developed, and a lot of it seemed to be in the South Central Midwest area where a vendor that the FAA used for implementing the ground network wasn't working right. And the FAA is they're encouraging people to report when they do see the shadowing, because it's not the hardware in your aircraft, it's something to do with the hardware on the ground through the ground network what they've built, and it allows them to track it down. Apparently, I believe they've tracked it down to one vendor, and they're working through the problems right now.
Excellent. We got a couple other specific questions, and then we'll have to wrap up because obviously we're at the end of our time. One of them is, does the NGT-9000 have an automatic altitude mode when you get going, or do you have to manually switch it?
No, the NGT-9000 it displays and it's always on. So when you're actually flying into an airport environment and you look at your traffic display, some of the targets will be like a beigeish orange color. And when you look at your pilot's guide, you'll see, oh, that's a target that's on the ground. So it wouldn't be uncommon to be flying in an area and you see a target 3,000 feet below you traveling at 12 knots. You're like, boy, that's strange. Well, that's because he's on the ground taxiing down the runway, and that's why his color looks different. So go ahead, Jeff.
No, continue.
So one of the things to think about, what was the main question again here real quick?
We were talking about altitude mode and whether that's something that needs to be automatically switched.
Yeah, so once the aircraft accelerates to a certain speed and begins to lift off, since it has a WAAS GPS on the device, it goes automatically into altitude mode, and it can be, it'll be displayed differently on the display, and it's sending out information differently to air traffic control as well.
And just a clarification, because there's also been some questions out there about altitude, and certainly the difference between your transponder using pressure altitude versus what you may be seeing out of your GPS, et cetera, or your adjusted altitude on your altimeter.
So this device is going to be sending your GPS altitude, but it also is going to be sending your barometric pressure altitude. So it ties right to your encoder. One of the nice things about the Lynx unit is we can use both a digital encoder or a gray code encoder, which basically means you can use the old encoder that's in your airplane. You don't have to buy a new one when installing a Lynx unit. So it is going to be sending both of those pieces of information is packaged in that extended squitter burst every second.
Right, and for clarity, of course, that's sending that altitude at 2992. So if you've adjusted your, if you're made an adjustment with your baro, then you're obviously not going to match because it's for a different purpose.
Right.
A quick question also about, now we've talked about the 2020 mandate for the U.S., but of course, there are different mandate dates for other countries, and I think that's something that people have inquired about. There's ways to get that information online as well.
There is. I can't think of the websites offhand right now, but I think with a quick Google search, you'd be able to find whatever country you were interested in, their ADSB mandate and timelines and type of airframes that it would apply to.
Right, and then just for clarity, of course, I mean, there seems, it does so much in terms of what the 9000 displays for you that it can be easily confused with a navigator looking at, what can I do direct to with it? Can I do other things? But certainly, we're talking about just a wonderful supplemental display that's really your dedicated hazard display and has, found its way to the top of the radio stack where a transponder used to basically live at the bottom because of that. But, it's obviously not a navigator in itself.
You're exactly right, Jeff. It shouldn't be confused as the navigator. Obviously, a lot of people use their iPads for navigation, et cetera, and they're not really technically TSO navigators either. So it does have a WAAS GPS aircraft location on it, and it Wi-Fi's that WAAS GPS aircraft location to your iPad. But technically, this is not a TSO navigator. You're not going to be shooting LPV approaches with it or anything like that.
Excellent. So, Mark, thank you so much for your time. We are out of time, but questions can always be sent into Mark, Steve, and the rest of the staff over at L-3. If you forward any questions to me, Jeff Simon, over at SocialFlight, I will also make sure that I forward them over to them. And again, a quick reminder that we will have a recording of tonight's presentation. That'll be available on SocialFlight. You get a link to it following this presentation when you get an email from that. Usually takes us a few hours, possibly up until tomorrow morning, to be able to fully process it. But it's there. You'll be able to refer back to it. And also keep in mind that this is a series. And at SocialFlight, one of the most important things we do is education and delivering that through webinars such as today's. And so certainly register at SocialFlight. You'll get information. You'll get a weekly email that tells you what to expect, what events are happening, what webinars are coming up. And that will keep you up to date as we go through additional interesting topics in this series from a variety of manufacturers, and certainly will be more in this series from L3. So with that, again, thank you so much, Mark. I really appreciate your time. We all appreciate that. And thanks to everyone who took the time to come and join us today. And so again, thank you very much, and have a good evening. Bye.
Thank you, Jeff. Good night.